The Expectation of Faith is a discourse written by Søren Kierkegaard in 1843 as part of his collection of two upbuilding discourses. Kierkegaard published two upbuilding discourses 3 months after the publication of his big book, Either Or, which ended without a conclusion to the argument between A, the aesthete, and B, the ethicist, as to which is the best way to live one's life. Kierkegaard hoped the book would transform everything for both of them into inwardness. In 1832, Hegel began an argument with Christianity by saying that knowledge is not something hurtful to faith, but helpful. He says, philosophy, the love of knowledge, has the same content as religion. This is due in part to the efforts of Anselm and Abelard, who further developed the essential structure of faith in the Middle Ages. Hegel wants people to base their belief in God on knowledge rather than faith, but Kierkegaard wants each single individual to act out their faith before God. Faith is not won by mental toil, it's won by personal struggle and the help of God. Kierkegaard steers his readers away from the outer world of observation to the inner world of faith. Kierkegaard compared the poet A in Either Or to the upbuilding speaker in these words. The decisive difference between the poet and the upbuilding speaker remains, namely, that the poet has no end or goal other than psychological truth and the art of presentation, whereas the speaker, in addition, has principally the aim of transposing everything into the upbuilding. The poet becomes absorbed in the portrayal of the passion, but for the upbuilding speaker, this is only the beginning, and the next is crucial for him to compel the stubborn person to disarm, to mitigate, to elucidate, in short, to cross over into the upbuilding. And what did edifying or upbuilding mean to Kierkegaard? He explained this in relation to love in 1847. He says, to build up is to presuppose love. To be loving is to presuppose love. Only love builds up. To build up is to erect something from the ground up, but spiritually love is the ground of everything. No human being can place the ground of love in another person's heart. Yet love is the ground, and we build up only from the ground up. Therefore, we can build up only by presupposing love. Take love away, then there is no one who builds up and no one who is built up. Each of the 18 upbuilding discourses begin with a dedication, which is to the late Michael Peterson Kierkegaard, formerly a clothing merchant here in the city. My father, these discourses are dedicated. The dedication is worded exactly the same in each of his 18 upbuilding discourses. He did not dedicate one of his discourses to his mother, but only to his father. With regard to family affairs, it is remarkable that Kierkegaard never mentions his mother. She is never even named in his journals. And while he never tired of speaking about his father, and he dedicated all his edifying discourses to him, we have not a single word from his pen about his mother. Next, there is either a preface or a prayer attached to one of the discourses. The preface is dedicated to that single individual Kierkegaard calls my reader. He says, although this little book, which is called Discourses, not Sermons, because its author does not have authority to preach upbuilding discourses, not discourses for upbuilding, because the speaker by no means claims to be a teacher, wishes to be only what it is, a superfluity, and desires only to remain in hiding, just as it came into existence in concealment. I nevertheless have not bidden it farewell without an almost fantastic hope. Inasmuch as in being published it is, in a figurative sense, starting a journey, I let my eyes follow it for a while. I saw how it wended its way down solitary paths or walked solitary on public roads. After a few little mistakes, through being deceived by a fleeting resemblance, it finally met that single individual whom I with joy and gratitude call my reader, that single individual it is seeking, to whom, so to speak, it stretches out its arms, that single individual who is favorably enough disposed to allow himself to be found, favorably enough disposed to receive it, whether at the time of the encounter it finds him cheerful and confident or weary and pensive. On the other hand, Inasmuch as in being published it actually remains quiet without moving from the spot, I let my eyes rest on it for a little while. It stood there like a humble little flower under the cover of the great forest, sought neither for its splendor, nor its fragrance, nor its food value. But I also saw, or thought I saw, how the bird I call my reader suddenly noticed it, flew down to it, picked it, and took it home. And when I had seen this, I saw no more. His expectancy was humble. His hope was that one single individual might take an interest in his little pamphlet. 5 years later, he wrote, the big work, Either Or, was much read and more discussed, and then the two edifying discourses, dedicated to my deceased father, published on my birthday, a little flower hidden in the great forest, not sought out either for its beauty or for its scent, or because it was nourishing. No one took serious notice of the two discourses or concerned himself about them. One of Kierkegaard's friends bought the book and complained that it wasn't clever. Kierkegaard offered him his money back. Either Or was indirect communication, but Kierkegaard's discourses are direct communication. The two modes of communication have ultimately the same aim: to make aware of the religious, the essentially Christian. The expectancy of faith or the expectation of faith begins with a short biblical passage and proceeds to explore the nature of faith and the role it plays in the lives of individuals. Kierkegaard emphasizes the importance of faith as an essential element of Christian existence and discusses how expectations and beliefs shape one's relationship with God. Every individual is engaged in a struggle with himself, whether he knows it or not. He has a natural need to formulate a life view, a conception of the meaning of life and its purpose. Many will find meaning and purpose in maintaining health, developing talent, or having money. All the worldly goods are outer goods, and each person struggles to possess his share of these goods. Kierkegaard says, faith has a different quality. It is not only the highest good, but it is a good in which all can share. And he who rejoices in his possession of it rejoices also on behalf of countless generations of men. For what I possess, he says, that every man possesses or may possess. He who wishes it for another man wishes it for himself. He who wishes it for himself wishes it for every man. For that quality by virtue of which a man has faith is not one in which he is different from another man, but that wherein he is identical with him. That whereby he possesses it is not something in which he differs from others, but something in which he is absolutely identical with everyone else. Kierkegaard says that no one ever has to struggle with another to gain faith. One must struggle only with oneself and with God. He says, it was a new glory in faith that no man can give it to another, but that what is highest, noblest, most sacred in man, that every man has. It is inherent in him. Every man has it if he wills to have it. And this is the glory of faith, that it can only be had on this condition. Therefore, it is the only unfailing good, because it can only be had through being constantly acquired, and can only be acquired through being constantly developed. He goes on to say that it is a duty to have faith, and not to have faith is a sin. Kierkegaard says an individual puts on duty because duty is not outside himself but within himself. His definition of sin is that it is the opposite of faith. He is interested in helping the person find faith, but he has too much respect for him to just wish faith into his being. He says, if I, with my wish or with my gift, could present him with the highest good, then could I also take it from him, even if he need not fear this. What is worse, if I could do this, then I should, in the same moment that I give it to him, take it from him. For in the fact that I gave him the highest good, I took the highest good from him. For the highest would be that he should give it to himself. Therefore, I will thank God that this did not happen. My love has only lost its anxiety and gained gladness. For I know that with all my efforts, I still should not have been able to preserve this good for him as certainly as he himself can keep it. He will not have to thank me for it, not because I set him free, but because he owes me nothing at all. Early existentialist writers developed their thinking along this same line of thought. Delmore Schwartz said, "No one can take your bath for you." Martin Heidegger said, "No one can die your death for you." And Rudolf Bultmann, along with Kierkegaard, said, "No one can hold your faith for you." Kierkegaard then examines how different reactions to life's conditions are affected by whether an individual has faith or not. He says, "When the world begins its sharp testing, when the storms of life snap the vigorous expectation of youth, when existence, which seems so loving and so gentle, transforms itself into a merciless proprietor who demands everything back, everything which he gave so that he could take it back, then the believer looks with sadness and pain at himself and at life, but he still says, 'There is an expectation which all the world cannot take from me. It is the expectation of faith, and this is victory. I am not deceived, for what the world seemed to promise me, that promise I still did not believe that it would keep. My expectation was not in the world, but in God. This expectation is not deceived. Even in this moment, I feel its victory more gloriously and more joyfully than all the pain of loss. If I lost this expectation, then would everything be lost. Now I have still conquered through my expectation, and my expectation is victory." The other view is presented with this quote: "When everything changes, when grief supersedes joy, then they fall away, they lose faith, or more correctly, let us not confuse the language, they then show that they never had it."